Hello, welcome back to another episode of The Social Jar. I'm your host, Dan Wiseman, but it feels like it's been a while since I last introduced us, so I'll do that on this one in case we got any new listeners. I'm your host, Dan Wiseman, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Andreas Georgiou. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing great. Back in the flow of things here with The Social Jar. We obviously kicked 2022 off with our podcast talking about he's forgotten what we're talking about. No, obviously we were discussing that one topic
We're back.
I remember really well.
So obviously we discussed
social media,
the groundbreaking news of traditional media forms being surpassed by user-generated content on social media. Not that you would ever forget such a poignant and topical debate, my friend.
Absolutely.
And so I hope that you've not forgotten what we're planning to talk about this week, because in something of a rare twist to the normal Social Jar form, we're bringing our own topics to each other, in which we're going to be debunking some of the more, I guess, sort of popular or infamous social media myths that we see bandied about quite a lot that aren't necessarily true and we would like to put an end to.
Absolutely. Debunking myths is part of our job, essentially.
Yep.
When we have clients come to us and say, oh, we could just do it like this. And then we have to explain, no, that's not how you do it. That's incorrect. And then we have to then obviously proceed to do it the right way. But that's how we all have jobs. So I'm not too angry about that. A lot of friends and people on social media, they'll ask me questions every now and then. And sometimes I'll be thinking, is it really that complex? Is it really that complex? And the truth is yes, because I think there's a lot of misinformation about social media, which when social media was in its infancy in the mid to early 2000s, algorithms didn't really exist. It wasn't really such a thing. It was a very, very basic pen and paper approach to social media. And as time has changed, obviously algorithms have become a much, much bigger part in terms of how we consume our content on social media, what is being showed to us, when it's being showed to us. And it's not quite as simple as, hey, just go and make a post now. There's a lot more intricacy to it. But along with that, there's still some myths, aren't there, Dan, that relate to the good old days of social media infancy.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think there's a lot that, it's still despite its popularity, social media is still very much an unknown quantity, I think, in the eyes of, Joe Public. I think, I spent obviously some time back at home over Christmas and stuff like that. And my parents, they have sort of a basic grasp of social media, but they just don't understand what I do for 8 hours a day. So I'm like, I go in, obviously we have to plan all the content, there's meetings, we have to, do all the scheduling, the posting, and all this sort of stuff. And so that takes 15 minutes. I'm like, no, that's actually quite a lengthy process. And they're like, I don't understand how. So I think it sort of shows that there's still, people, and thankfully, because as you said, it what gives birth to companies like ours that provide the help to people that don't quite have the time or don't quite understand social media. These companies, the brands, we swoop in to help. But, in something of an additional package, we're going to be debunking some of the more popular myths that we've seen online. We've each got 2 topics each, 2 things that we feel quite personally passionate about that we're going to sort of, not rant about. I hope it doesn't dissolve into that.
I'll probably end up ranting.
I know that, yeah.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I look forward to some of these rants, mate. Why don't you get us rolling with your first myth that you're going to pick apart intrinsically, I imagine.
Without any further ado. And you? Is it ado?
I think it's just ado.
Oh, is it?
No,
okay.
I think so.
Without any further ado, then let's begin. So, mine, Dan, when we were planning the show, I told you what my topics were, and thankfully you went, yeah, they're good. They're good ideas. So we'll kick things off with one of my biggest pet peeves, which is, and I don't know why, but a lot of time people actually come to me and tell me when I should be doing this, which is posting times and days.
Right.
So to break that down further, it is when should you or should a company be posting on social media and at what time? Now, Dan, I'm gonna just begin this, I think, really fairly, right. I guess. I mean, do you think it's that deep? Before we start, do you think it's a deep thing Do you think it's like a
Posting
really
times?
critical? Do you think it's the most important thing ever about when you post?
Not necessarily, as long as it's not at some stupid time, like you're not posting at like 2 a.m. or something like that. I think generally, especially with the shift away from chronological feeds, you should be okay, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Because as we're saying, algorithms now in Facebook, especially, and obviously other platforms, it's very, very not irrelevant, but it's down the totem pole in terms of importance. Like you seeing a post, like we discussed it on the Facebook Files episode, that what people were doing to make sure that their post was appearing higher in the feed was like obviously inciting controversy so that there would be more comments, and comments obviously scored much higher in Facebook's algorithm, and therefore those kind of posts appeared higher and appeared more frequently in people's feeds. Now, from an absolute basic level, there is, I'll be honest and openly say this, there is no importance, there is no true answer on when and what time you should be posting. However, to caveat that myth, it is of course important to be posting generally at a time when your audience is online. Now, you might be thinking, well, how the hell am I ever going to know that? And this is where the age-old myth related to this comes. Well, just post it like before bedtime, because when everyone's in bed and they're scrolling on their phone, that old chestnut. Might be true. I have no idea. Obviously, I do have an idea, but when you are posting, social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram in particular have really, really great tools. YouTube has it as well, and LinkedIn tells you when your users or the people that like your page are generally online. Now, what we generally advise people is to plan your content around those high periods. And each day has a different high period. Mondays might look different to Saturdays, and Sundays might look different to Wednesdays. So just looking at it once and going, oh yeah, 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. Yeah, cool. Just do that for the whole week. It's not going to work. People's habits change on a daily basis, as we know. Someone might have a club one night and they don't have it the next night. So habits generally do change, and then the weekend you can throw that all out the window because people are trying to live their lives. So use the social tools. They're really, really helpful. You can plan your content. I would say to maximize, one of my biggest tips would be to try and post just before the high period, especially when we're talking about algorithms like Facebook, which is based on engagement and interaction, and you're going to want that head start to see if people pick up on that post and then push it up the feed for when more people are online. But an absolute pet peeve of mine when people say, when should I post? What's the answer? Is it before bed? Is it at breakfast time? People try and compare it to their own habits. They go, well, I wake up and have breakfast and then scroll TikTok. It's like, that's you. Everyone has their own individual way of consuming social media. So use the data that's actually there, and Facebook are amazing at this in terms of the data they provide. LinkedIn, YouTube as well is fantastic. Look at the bloody data. It's there. It's free. You don't have to pay anything for it. It's right there for you to use and for you to build your content. So there you go. Myth number one, dispelled.
Very good job. Very good point. Very well made. I think it's very interesting. It's somewhat topical because, we ran a post, it's going to be a little while back now, where we're reporting on Instagram making a return to a chronological feed. There's going to be a number of new feed options coming soon where you can sort of select the order in which your feed sort of appears. And I think, the chronological feed, which was for so long a staple of the platform, might be coming back. And I think it'd be interesting to see whether, as you said, these kind of myths is to say, yeah, you need to post at this time. Or I always think you got to cater in for, whether do people look at like, I can't remember what thing it was like. It was like during the Euros, like when England were playing, obviously, companies like that, there was like a certain amount of adverts that were posted like during the game, didn't do well. There's ones that were like posted like half time and all that sort of stuff. So it's very interesting. It's like sort of like, have you seen that apparently they like power surge the national grid at like half time of like big games because everyone's going to be going and putting the kettle on? Maybe it's a little bit like that. And I think the return to chronological feed might see a heightened to these things of like stressing about posting times and stuff like that. So at least we've got your very well made point there to counteract it.
Well, with a chronological feed, what I'm saying is actually even more important, because if you are talking only chronologically and not what the algorithm is pushing, and because we know that social media has become almost a pay-to-play kind of feature, especially on Facebook and Instagram. You can't guarantee that all of your followers are going to see that post. Twitter's a bit different, but if we go back to chronological feed, and it is literally, if they say what they're doing is fully truthful and they are just going to show things chronologically, then looking at the data and seeing when people are online is even more important, because that will then mean it's going to be, there's arguably less doubt that whether it'll be in front of their face or not. Obviously, we know Facebook law is always going to be about advertisements and pushing companies and brands to use Facebook ads. So I doubt we'll ever see a point of view where 100% of the audience can sign online at 5 p.m. and 100% of the audience see the post. But we're never going to be the case like that. But, chronological feed definitely poses an interesting element to that.
For sure, mate. For sure. Very good start. No rants. The voice heightened a little bit, and I thought we're going to get a saying A-bomb with Andreas. Yeah, but very well done, my friend. So to bring one of my own, and this is something that I feel particularly passionate about because it affects my day-to-day life, and it's a bit of a grievance of mine, and it's sort of the way that brands promote their products. And I think there's this sort of misconception, especially amongst sort of organizations and brands that don't quite understand social media or haven't necessarily, because it changes all the time and it's changed so much in recent years. And the way that they use social media to promote products or over promote them. And I think the myth is sort of that social media is this ideal sounding board for brands to promote and consistently push their products, when in fact, really it's the opposite. It's not a good place to go and just constantly be pushing promotional messaging, because it's a guaranteed way to piss people off and lose followers, because people go on social media for their enjoyment. They don't go on there to be bombarded with ads. And I think people are more desensitized, particularly young generations, millennials and Gen Z, have grown up in the internet era where ads, as long as I can remember, really, from sort of the early 2010s, would you agree, when like click-through rates and impressions sort of took over the advertising sphere, people have been cramming ads into every available pixel of internet space that they could find. It's something like $5.3 trillion a year are spent on online advertising forms. And I think now we actively are looking for ways to avoid online ads and sort of that promotional messaging, to the point where, like, you ever Google something, you're looking for a product, and obviously you get the first three are like ad results. I feel so aggrieved if I click on one of those. I will deliberately scroll past them, like, no, I'm not conforming, because we all want to feel like we're above it. And I think that, when you see the ways in which brands post online, you have to be more clever about it. There's this sort of 80-20 rule, which is sort of fabled amongst sort of creators and social media professionals, whereby 80% of a brand's content should be non-promotional content, and 20% is a post with your CTAs, like buy this here, stuff like that. And I think that balance is so important to hit, because you're starting to see so many studies and surveys. I saw one from SurveyMonkey that found that 74% of users are tired of social media ads. So brands continuously promoting products with purely promotional copy will just disconnect you further from your audience. And I think if you only have to look at the biggest brands in the world, and maybe they can afford to do it because they're the biggest, but I think you need to look at the way that McDonald's or Coca-Cola or Nike use their pages. You'll never see McDonald's be like, hey, go and buy a Big Mac, or like, do you know what I mean? You don't see it, and it's because these brands are wiser than that. They know how to connect with widespread audiences, that if they get too promotional or too heavy on the promo content, they're just going to end up winding people up and losing the audience that they've spent so long trying to build. Yeah,
like nobody is dumb enough to just make an advert that says go buy this now.
Yeah.
Because it just won't work. I mean, to be fair, if you've got the greatest product in the world and you have complete consumer trust, it probably would work. But as we know, people don't like to be told what to do. And we actually touched on this in the last episode about why bigger brands use influencers to market their product. See, I do remember actually what we talked about. They use influencers to market their product as opposed to, more traditional forms. So, no, definitely, I think you've got to be smart with your copy. You've got to sell without selling. That's, I guess, the hidden secret. And that's why, for example, a lot of what we do, we're promoting what we do and how we do it, but we're not outright saying, yeah, come to us. Like, we want to help people. We want to work with big brands and great companies and help them achieve their goals. But for us to just say, hey, come use the uniform because we're the greatest of all time, and we'll help you reach your goals. Like, that doesn't sell. Results sell, and that's why showing a product or showing, like in our case, great achievements that we've done in the past, that's what makes sense. Like, you think of all the great adverts you've ever seen, all these Big Mac adverts, which are about families getting together after the football game, or coming home from a late night, and he brings his pregnant wife a Big Mac. All that's saying buy a Big Mac, but it's not saying buy a Big Mac. You know what I mean? It's doing it in a coy way, and that's why even if you throw £100,000 at Facebook advertising, if you just do it in the way that you're talking about now, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I think we spoke, as I said, we did speak a little bit about sort of ads and influencer marketing in the last episode, and it always makes me laugh. Like, I follow a lot of athletes on social media, obviously big sports fans. And I think you see it with NBA athletes particularly, because the players are a lot more relaxed over there, and that they sort of tweet very freely, and the language is a lot more chilled out and stuff like that. And it's so blatantly obvious when they're doing a sponsored post, because it's suddenly there's A1 grammar, everything is perfect, it's all capitalized and grammatically sound, and it's sort of like you sort of, people just reply to them now like, yep, go and get the bag, we see what you're doing, like, and it's they're so see-through now, and you have to be you have to use more sort of awareness, I think is the right word, when you're promoting with this stuff. And I tell you what I like, man, I like how brands now act on TikTok, because you see it again, just so with sport and stuff, you see brands getting involved with the banter in the comments and replying to different football fans and sort of like showing them up and stuff like that. And you're starting to see more brands do it in the comments, where they get involved with the people that are making the content. I think that's really cool, because people do want to see the personality behind a brand, and sometimes even the admin's personality.
Yeah, admin has become a super big thing in our industry, especially in sports. It's like, oh yeah, give admin a rise, all this, because again, it's actually, it's personification, I guess you could argue, if my English hasn't let me down there, which is given like a human tendency. I really hope that's what
you're all right. You're all right.
My English teacher, oh god, they would kill me. But giving that human tendency to an account, so you do feel like you're interacting with someone, because truthfully, you are actually interacting with someone. There is somebody sat there who is being that brand and business. So yeah, definitely the admin culture, but be truthful, be real, don't sell, but sell. If we're being quick,
clever about it, 100%. So yeah, that's something I feel properly passionate about, and I love seeing brands be a bit more relaxed, conveying a bit more personality. So I wanted to debunk that myth. I feel a lot better having done it, mate. So back to you, mate, for your final one. Back
to me. Will he rant this time? Yeah. That's the question. Well, look, I've got some data to back this one, and I think it's a very interesting one, because this is something that when uniform first came around in 2019, it was one of the things, I don't want to say one of the problems, but it was one of the challenges that we were having to face the most when onboarding new clients. And that is to answer the question, or to dispel the myth, a brand or a business should be on every single social media platform. Now, I can understand why brands, businesses, execs would actually think correct. Brands should be on every single platform, because every platform unlocks a different audience. It has a different demographic that you can reach to. Correct. Yeah. No, that's truthful. We know that every platform is different. They skew very differently. I've got some data in a second to talk about how they do actually skew differently. But that point there, that caveat about them skewing differently, is exactly the reason why, if you don't have the resources, you definitely should not be on every single social media platform. Let's not forget, in a lot of these organizations, we have a lot of people we follow on Twitter, a lot of social media managers who are not only tasked with creating social media content, but they're also the graphic designer, they're the video editor, they're this, they're that, they're the marketer. One person doing the job of multiple. And then one day, Mr. Bossman walks in and says, "Hey mate, have you heard of TikTok?" You heard of TikTok? Because I think we should be on TikTok. Everyone's on TikTok now. Let's get on TikTok. And obviously, a social media manager's head is about to explode from like, I haven't got enough hours in the day to do Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Snapchat, all the others, YouTube, whatever, you name it. Now you want me to do TikTok, And that is one of the biggest pet peeves. And that's, again, one of the biggest myths is that you have to be on every platform. I mean, the data that I've got here is about the demographics of each platform. I'm sure people will find this really interesting. This is from a report which Sprout Social did. So Facebook's largest demographic group is 25 to 34-year-olds, which is around 26.3%. Instagram skews very, very similar to Facebook, surprisingly.
Yeah.
A lot of people... Facebook gets branded and tarnished as this older platform when I guess people think it is because it's mainly like mums and dads.
Yeah,
and
it's the new mums net. Yeah, that's the way it's seen.
I think people generally use Facebook more as a scrolling thing and a commenting thing as opposed to posting about themselves. That's why you see more posts from like...
Are you debunking a myth within a myth?
I'm debunking a myth within a myth. Yeah, this is Inception. But we'll leave that to one side. But here's where it gets interesting. Twitter, 30 to 49 age, it skews towards in the demo with around 44%. TikTok, Dan, I'm sure you can guess.
Yeah, very young, very young. It's got to be teens and stuff. Yeah,
18 to 24. LinkedIn, Dan, can you guess what age demo roughly LinkedIn is skewing according to Sprout Social?
See, this is interesting because I think a lot of people would angle to an older demo, sort of the one that you were talking about for Twitter, like, that sort of 30s and 40s because it's, the professionals and that sort of thing. But I think actually LinkedIn's very popular amongst younger people because they, appreciate the importance it can have in getting a job and stuff like that. So I'm actually going to say maybe it's younger than you might think.
Yeah, fantastic. So wrong, but fantastic explanation. I really liked that. I really did.
I tried
you almost convinced me, and I've got the data in front of me. Well, look, LinkedIn doesn't actually skew younger. However, I could definitely see why, and it is becoming more popular with a younger demographic. But LinkedIn is skewing from 46 to 55-year-olds.
That's
so
yeah. I've perhaps
the
reverse psychology
from
myself.
The examples. Yeah, you have, mate. But it was a good try.
Yeah, I tried.
So, as we're looking there, pretty much every platform has got a different demographic. So that's why what I said at the very beginning, when your boss comes in and says we need to be on all these platforms, you then say to your boss, hey, look, Mr. Boss Man, look, if you really want me to do this extra platform, first of all, I'm going to need some more money because that's how it works. But secondly, you do understand that X platform has a different audience to Y platform. And if we actually spend more time trying to make an audience on X platform, even though we know it skews to much higher than our demo, then we're going to spend less time being able to focus on this platform, which absolutely is our core demographic. It's where our clients are mostly coming from, that age group, that demographic. And therefore, we might actually lose momentum with our core clientele. Hit boss man with that. Hit boss man with that, and you should be good. You should be good. But that's my myth to dispel there. That no, you do not need to be on every platform. You can be, and look, at the end of the day, and most companies are generally on every platform. It comes with resources, but as we know, like when we first got into TikTok, before we fully understood it and learned about the platform, we just tried to replicate what we were doing on Reels, for example, on Instagram. And it just didn't work, just did not work for our clients. And then we started building TikTok content specific for TikTok. And obviously, no surprise there, the numbers grew, the pages grew. And obviously, we started to see the fruits of our work there. So another thing to have in mind, you can't just be like, yeah, copy and paste what you're already doing over there and do it there. That's not how social works.
I think that there's also a big point for just saying that some brands just don't belong on certain platforms. Like, we work with, thankfully, some very understanding clients. There's some that, some will have a preference for like, right, we need to be really big on LinkedIn. It's very important to us for a professional organization. And that company who's preferring that more professional approach wouldn't work on TikTok because it doesn't, like, what would you say? The content, you need video. There's just a lot to be said that some just are suited to other platforms. And I think TikTok is a really good one to touch on because people don't want to miss out. Everyone's hearing about this amazing new platform that's taken over all the other. That's where everyone's watching. That's what a lot of people are spending their time and hours on. And it's easy to feel like you're missing out. But unless you go there and you do it well and you do it consistently, which is the other problem, it just won't work. And I think people don't want to see professionally made content on TikTok. They want to see more organic stuff. They like the big oligarchs of the corporate world haven't infiltrated that app. It's still very user driven. And so certain brands just won't belong on there. And I think it's, there's also, for all the data, that's also a point in itself, isn't it? That, you got to stay where you belong, I suppose is the best way to
Yeah, to say it nicely. Yeah.
And so I think, that's sort of, I've got my final one, and this is, we spoke of Inception, myths within a myth, and I came here with an idea of a myth that I wanted to debunk and found out that I was actually acting upon a myth and had to debunk that. So I was like, so I came on and I wanted to say that follower counts aren't everything. I felt like there's this really big impression that, and I think it comes from the dawn of social media in those early 2010s when follower counts were everything. It was a sort of a game of online top trumps, wasn't it? Where it's like the bigger the follower count, the bigger the better the account, and it was very important, and that led to sort of bulk buying followers and fake followers and accounts that would do that, which I think has caused, maybe not so much now, but certainly in the years where that was happening, quite a big distrust as to accounts with big follower accounts, like peculiarly big follower accounts and stuff like that. And so I think it sort of led to a bit of a distrust in that regard. And I sort of felt that like engagement is a far better metric, because when you have a smaller, like Hero and Uniform, like we don't have hundreds of thousands of followers, but we have a community where we're engaging with a lot of like-minded people who really appreciate, a lot of people that we've built up a rapport with, a relationship with, that we know that come back to us, it's really nice, the community that we've built up in our online space. And that what is 100,000 followers when you're getting just a few likes and comments and shares? Isn't it better to have a smaller pool, that community, and have a smaller follow account when you're actually getting more bang for your buck in terms of the content that you produce and the engagement that you get on it? That was going to be my point. And there's a lot, in fairness to myself, there's a lot online that reflects what I've just said. But with that said, it's sort of, as you read into it, you forget that this 99-1 rule, which I was reading about, which sort of states that according to data, just 1% of all social media users create content, and a further 9% are just online to share and like content. So they don't produce anything themselves, they're just retweeting, liking, and you do see a lot of that online. But a mega 90% of all online users just lurk. They're just there to read and watch, and they don't tweet, they don't post, they don't record video, they don't post, they're just there to observe and to read. And whilst they might not be helping your engagement rate, the effectiveness of your CTAs or whatever it might be, lurking followers are no more or no less important than the super engaged ones. Just because they're not retweeting or liking or resharing your content doesn't mean that it's not affecting their purchasing options or how they act in day-to-day life, or how they perceive your brand, which can be just as important. So as I was reading this, I was like, damn, if you do have a big follow account, and it can be quite disheartening, when you have a huge amount of followers and you feel getting the engagement that you deserve. It's not always bad. There are other metrics that you should look into that suggest that just because it's not getting the likes and contents doesn't mean that it's not having the desired effect. And I was quite surprised to sort of maybe debunk my own myth that I was perhaps acting on something of a stereotype maybe. And I learned something.
It's always good to learn,
learned
isn't
something,
it?
100%. But yeah, there's definitely both sides of the coin there, I think, in that follower numbers, they are and aren't a bit of a vanity metric.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend buying followers though, because platforms, especially Twitter, do actually audit this quite a lot, and they do get rid of.
Yeah, that's a big
they
no-no,
do get
isn't
rid
it?
of fake
Big
followers.
no-no.
Like Amir Khan had a massive problem a few years ago with all these fake followers that he'd bought, and Twitter stripped him of them. And I think they stripped him of his blue tick actually for a while as well. So these platforms do look and look. People know if you've got, let's say you've got 100,000 followers and then you only get 10 likes. They know that it's fake, and then they're not going to trust your brand. Don't do it. It's just not worth it. It's not
100%.
worth it. I know, oh yeah, but they've got 10,000 followers. Yeah, I get it. 10,000 followers, 10,000 engaged followers is an amazing metric. But 10,000 fake followers to vanity, yourself and your brand, it's just not worth it down the line.
100%. And I think, it still provides, they still provide a significant milestone. I think regardless, if you are an organization where you're wanting to be like very established and official as sort of leaders in their field, having a decent follower count and hitting those, like 1,000, 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, like having those milestones is important because they still have that. There's still a bit of a hangover from the early 2010s where they do make you appear more reputable, and the more followers they have, you're a bigger account and all this sort of stuff. And I think now it's nice because, you are starting to see smaller accounts, as I said, set up those communities. And so having a strong following is important for establishing the ideal online presence for certain brands, but there can also be a little bit more to that. Whereas, sometimes for brands, having a smaller one that's more engaged and more personal can be just as beneficial as having loads and loads of followers. And I think there's this, as I said, that is a myth. I've tried to clear it up. I've not confused myself, but sort of said that the myth exists, but perhaps for a reason is maybe my conclusion. To draw a line under that that exists. It's sometimes true, sometimes not.
Has been miffed.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. I think that's a nice one to round up because, as I said, I learned something today.
It's always good. Yeah. I'm glad you come to work and learn
100%,
things.
100%. I'm a better man having gone through that process. But it's an interesting one, and I think it's important, because we see fake news as a word that thankfully doesn't dominate social as much anymore, but it really did for a long time. And so you can there's fake news on social, but then there's fake news about socials. I think it's important to dispel both. And that's what we're here with, the voices of wisdom and reason within the social media industry here on the Social Jar, aren't we, mate?
Isn't there a TV show called like Mythbusters?
Mythbusters, yeah.
We're basically
doing. I think we're doing a better job. Yeah, you ever seen the show?
No, never seen it.
I've seen like a few episodes. It's quite funny. So it's like these American guys that there are like certain myths to do with like history or like sort of physics or whatever.
Or like
they are.
Bigfoot and stuff like that.
Like stuff like that, and they like
things that definitely aren't.
They go out and bust said myth.
Yeah.
But I think we've done just as good
I
a
think
job.
our work is definitely more acclaimed. But no, it's been a good episode, and as I said, great to be back.
100%, mate. 100%. Been a blast. And I think we're now coming into 2022. We're coming in hot on the Social Jar. We'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. If there's any topics that you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, then get in touch. We are humans behind the uniform banner here and the social media pages. We'll reply. We'd love to hear from you because you guys are the reason that we keep doing the show. We really appreciate all of the support. And as I said, if you've got a suggestion, something you'd like to hear me and Andreas talk about on a future episode, then just drop it down below. But until next time, guys, stay safe and we'll see you soon.